That New World Order theme. It's just this sensory overload.
The scale of the pop when the bell rings. Oh my God. Hogan kicks out at 2 for an earthquake of a pop. He spits on the belt, but he's basically spitting on Hulkamania at this point. This is a WrestleMania moment.
Hello and welcome to the Best Match Ever series, where we delve into the anatomy of a classic wrestling match. Michael Hamflett, let's get straight into it. What have you chosen for us to analyze today?
Coming in hot, Sidge, WrestleMania 18, The Rock versus Hollywood Hogan. I think there's only one real place to start with this, and this is the, of course, return of Hogan as part of the NWO to WWE. A little recap that gets us to WrestleMania, although it was all kind of condensed within the No Way Out period. It was an early WrestleMania in 2002, taking place in March. So Hogan and Rock had about 3 to 4 weeks of TV to get to what is ultimately one of the biggest matches the company could have ever promoted. The New World Order, of course, controversially returned to WWE in February 2002. And following their return, having had a testy interaction with The Rock, Hulk Hogan comes out on Raw and basically refers to The Rock as the flavour of the month. He's Hollywood Hogan. He is Hulk Hogan forever. He does a bit of an all you people promo on the Chicago crowd that night, saying that, like, I built all of this and then you turned on me. You went for guys like The Rock, guys like Steve Austin. Rock comes out, kind of resents that a bit, but then says, well, look, if you really believe that, let's have a challenge. Icon versus icon. Hollywood Hogan going one-on-one with the Great One, going one-on-one with The Rock. There's that famous face-off of the two of them, looking left, looking right, capturing the imagination of the fans, and the match is set, even with a handshake that leads to a rock bottom, and it's effectively a gentleman's agreement. Until Hulk Hogan smashes The Rock in the back of the head with a hammer, traps him in an ambulance, and drives into an ambulance with a truck. He then pins him on television in the frankly remarkable NWO versus Steve Austin and Rock throwaway tag match on the go-home edition of Raw, because it was 2002, what was happening.
They did everything in 2002. Every conceivable pairing dynamic between big stars. They just did it on TV for minimal returns.
Minimal returns is right. You had the pinfall of The Rock by Hulk Hogan as your go-home segment. Austin interacting with those three for the first time ahead of his match with Scott Hall. And that takes us to March 17th for WrestleMania. But I suppose first, considering the nature of how this match came together, what were your feelings that you remember at the time of the New World Order, and especially Hulk Hogan returning to WWE for the first time since 93?
Indeed. Right, okay. Generally speaking, my broad view of pro wrestling, WWF, as it was still just about known at the time, I was low on it. The invasion had completely failed to capture my imagination. And I distinctly remember feeling that No Way Out promo, I was so hyped for the arrival of the New World Order because as a wrestling fan, even one who, and I'll get to this imminently, was very much... Hulk Hogan can't wrestle. And yet, even when I was trying too hard, to be a different kind of wrestling fan, and we know he's an arsehole, caveats must be stated, the Hogan magic swept over, and when the iconic chair promo with Vince McMahon we don't do it anymore. We knew Vince McMahon was an arsehole at the time. We know he's a much bigger one now. But I've got a few lapsed fan mates from school. The delivery of Vince McMahon saying inject is the thing that we just did to pop each other for years. Like, obviously not the last few years, but for years. Inject. And it's just like, oh, right, okay, well, the business is coming back. They've ruined it in 2001. They've completely ruined it and monopolized it. And little did we know, even though the evidence was there, it was kind of like an extinction level event.
Yeah.
The invasion and the monopoly.
Backwards on a chair.
Indeed.
It wouldn't have gone to that effort, throughout that reveal,
So I was very, very excited about the No Way Out promo, and then immediately, like within minutes, I was like, I know who you are, and I'm dreading why you're here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you're here to just do more WWF stuff in a WWF context. It's not remotely the same. It was a cute idea, a cute motive, storyline-wise, to bring them in, but the energy was lacking. This sort of playing coy about, what we're actually doing here. Promo just completely fell flat. There was no bombast. There was no sense of chaos. There was nothing that made the NWO the NWO. And as you said in your lovely recap, they just did WWF stuff with the NWO, and the die was cast immediately.
Yeah.
I'd seen Austin drop Triple H in a car from a forklift. I'd seen, cement poured into a nice new sports car, and then we're going to get to see more vehicle stuff for heat angles. And you just knew, I should have learned my lesson after the invasion, right? This is a classic match, and we're going to be nice about it, but this is important context. You just knew immediately, right, this is screwed. So the TLDR of all of this was, on the eve of WrestleMania, I was not excited about Hogan versus Rock, even though I'd felt the initial excitement of, oh, God, it's Hogan coming back. And he was one of my favorites as a kid and all the rest of it. That subsided as soon as he opened his mouth at No Way Out. And again, March 2002, I'm a fan of Kurt Angle, I'm a fan of Chris Jericho and Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio and Tajiri, because I've been told, and they are great wrestlers, but the importance of in-ring was overstated by a lot of critics at the time, and you are informed by them. So I'm thinking, well, this match is not going to be very good, is it?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Not least, bear in mind, from a World Wrestling Federation that I told you for nearly a decade that Hogan was a fossil, a pensioner.
Yes,
this
is important.
They had spent the last decade telling you that because all of their stars were hot again, none of the legends mattered. This might be something difficult for younger fans to comprehend who maybe grew up in the 2000s, where WWE finally embraced its nostalgia for good and then sometimes for bad. But certainly at the height of the Attitude Era, at the height of the Monday Night Wars, you kind of couldn't, because half of the stars you were talking about were over here.
Yeah.
So you would see our nostalgia that we were told about was a Hall of Fame with black and white images of Gorilla Monsoon when he was still a wrestler, of Arnold Scanlon as Bob Backlund's manager. You weren't to think
People
about...
I'd never watched.
Yeah, you weren't to think about Hulk Hogan. You weren't to think about Randy Savage. You weren't to think about, by 1998, Bret the Hitman Hart, because the idea was, if they're on Nitro, the last thing we want...
They're dead.
The last thing we want you to do, curiosity viewers with your uppers and your down, is just take a look at what they might still be doing. It informed one of the reasons, not the only reason, that made the original NWO as successful as it was. I like those guys, but they're there now, so I'm just going to go there instead. And WWE knew that, were conscious of that. And the Hogan erasure in particular, you can still see now when you watch footage from the time he was away, is spikier and is more pronounced because he's the biggest one. If they're going to target one singular figure that represents the olden days, it's got to be Hogan, because
and there's the personal stuff with Vince and Hogan that goes into it as well. Just to hop onto your point, I just want to completely overtake WWE, WWF, until you get older, some of us, incredible at brainwashing. Absolutely unbelievable at brainwashing. You see it to this day.
It's a production choice.
They're incredible at this, and I only bring this up not to start on yet another battle of a culture war, but just to set the scene here of Hogan is ancient.
Yeah.
Hogan can barely move. Hogan, age, huckster, age in the cage, fossil, as you say. So, I mean, it bit them in the arse, really. If you look at the buy rate for WrestleMania 18, considering how momentous this match was, not the best. I mean, it's very impressive, but I think it fell short of their expectations as well. And a lot goes into it, a lot goes into it, but their sort of treatment of Hogan and the character informs a lot of it.
Yeah, it was an 860,000 buy rate, which didn't break the million that they probably would have wanted. I think it was slightly down from WrestleMania 17. It was a quiet reflection of how the business was dead, and really 2001 was kind of the end of the boom.
Yes.
There was a lot that they were able to place on a WrestleMania like this to kind of go into denial in a lot of 2002 to pretend that the balloon wasn't off the rose, but certainly one of the first signs. 68,237 packing into the Sky Dome, obviously the site of Hogan Warrior at WrestleMania 6. Still an amazing venue and an amazing crowd as WWE moved WrestleManias back to the stadium. So a lot of ways in which you could reflect greatness and dominance, even if we were about to leave that boom period once and for all. It's funny you mentioned Hogan's age. I did actually check this out beforehand, because obviously it was something we were asked to think about all the time until we weren't in 2002. He was 49 here, which for context is the same age as AJ Styles will be in 2026. It's the same age as Damian Priest was in 1994. I jest, but we've talked about this before. 49 is nothing now, because anyone can be anyone. And the television age of Hollywood Hogan in WWE was 1 month, which did matter, did make quite a big deal, to the point where even Hall and Nash, who were damaged by the immediate babyface turn of Hulk Hogan, still felt fresher just for being Hall and Nash instead of Razor and Diesel for the first time. So there was a little bit of wiggle room there. For contrast, The Rock was 29, which is staggering on its own terms, because how was a 29-year-old adult able to be this guy
Yeah.
in 2002, already kind of leaving wrestling behind, quietly in his rear view, even if he didn't want to admit it for his own brand at the time. And yeah, the stage is set, or at least so we think it is. Hollywood Hogan just beforehand says to the NWO that he wants to do this on his own, so don't expect the usual kind of cheating and chicanery that has so far been associated with the group. And that's maybe the first tell that the wrestlers themselves know this is going to play out differently to how the build might have been. Hogan comes out. It is one of the biggest and most sustained pops you will ever hear. The second Hogan comes out.
It's absolutely insane.
It is this is not to denigrate a Steve Austin pop. It is a glass smash pop that lasts for the full duration of Hogan walking to the aisle. It is that pitch. I mean, the pitch is similar for the duration of the match, but certainly as Hogan arrives, there are 68,000 Canadians that may as well have been sat there since WrestleMania 6 waiting for Hogan to return. There is one fan facing the hard camera that has the half of the WrestleMania 6 sign that you see constantly during the Warrior match. So he's got that same ticket to get back to that building, and you realise, like the rest of them, it's for Hulk Hogan back in their minds and mine, where he belongs ultimately on the WrestleMania stage in, Chris Jericho and Triple H, the main event of this card. The Hogan chants are absolutely deafening to such an extent that when the Rock's music hits, the only thing that breaks that noise is the boos. You can hear them kind of creeping in. We're going to talk about how they kind of get louder during the match. The cameras, almost desperately, knowing in hindsight, are finding pro-Rock signs. Hollywood Hogan's going to face Rock Bottom. The Rock's going to lay the smackdown on NWO, but the visuals do not match up with the sounds because all you are hearing is the boos getting louder and louder as the Rock enters. Jim Ross calls the Hogan love as the Rock walks down. Maybe a nostalgia thing, but even as the Rock takes to the turnbuckles for his big Rock pose, you can actually see fans standing up to flip him off or turn their backs on him. The die's already being cast before the bell rings.
Yeah. This Hogan entrance, for me, I forgot how powerful this was because the match starts when they take in the audience and they look from left to right, and the iconic opening sequence of this match is where it begins for me. I forgot this Hogan pop. Yeah. It's almost, so I was thinking, like, how do I articulate this? How do I describe the power of it? Imagine you're in a car on one of these sort of like sprawling American highways, freeways, whatever, with these 8 lanes. That always terrifies me as someone who doesn't drive. And you can just see in the distance this like really enormous cavernous building of the Skydome. Yeah, Skydome. How is it not on fire? Do you know what I mean? It looks like when you're inside and you see, it's just this sensory overload. That New World Order theme. I mean, it's never sounded better. Yeah. I mean, WCW got the act so much better, but in terms
They never put it in a stadium, did they?
Well, it did, but it still wasn't as good.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, the Atlanta. Yeah, I guess that's true, yeah.
That bombast, that... It's like, my head's vibrating just watching it. You've got the strobe. You describe it as the Steve Austin glass shatter, but sustained as a pitch. It's like, considering this is more like of a caricature of wrestling, and not what you think of it as like a sport. Yeah. It sounds like people are celebrating a last-minute winner against their most hated local rival. It's a ridiculous noise, and then you've got that strobe effect, the amount of just ridiculous bombast in that NWO theme. New World Order. It's like, how are you driving past that building and it doesn't look like some... raging orb from a sci-fi flick? How is there a roof on it?
Yeah, what's within is waiting to burst out.
Yes, it's the most incredible entrance. And one more thing on it, I don't have much to say about the Rocks. It's so much better than if this match happens even 10 years after. You get maybe a cinematic video ahead of it. You get this like maybe really long drawn out intro. Maybe Hogan chasing a trend is dressed up as some kind of superhero villain or whatever. All of that, when I watched that Hogan entrance at WrestleMania 18, I'm thinking we need to put a stop to how overblown these entrances are. We do, because people have got too much to react to. It's a great spectacle, don't get me wrong, but you diminish the chances of this happening. And maybe it couldn't happen because it's Hogan coming back to WWE. This means a ridiculous amount to a lot of people. But that thought did strike me when I watched it yesterday of the need to calm down at the very least with this really elaborate cinematic entrance custom stuff. It's not as good as this. But maybe it's just Hogan's star power, you know?
Well, I wonder if so many of those entrances are chasing this because you have to fake it because there are only so many perfect circumstances that come together.
Yeah.
Like of the star, of the time, of the person.
But then Austin didn't need it for the glass smash, you know?
No,
maybe it needs
true.
to be scaled back because this entrance, like, I rewinded it about 5 times.
Yeah.
The noise of it, it's insane.
It's the match. We're going to talk about this, you know, throughout the series about the different times at which the tone is set, about when the vibe is established, and that's often what makes a best match ever. And it is the second Hogan walks out, isn't it?
Yeah.
The tone is immediately established, and it's fascinating to me to watch. And you know, Jim Ross has got several like famous calls here, and the first one is nostalgia and split crowd, and trying just to sort of like keep the original story of The Rock as the kind of like wronged babyface, and Hogan as this interloper, and he's swimming against the tide.
Yeah, this just is not happening
from the off, and it gets to the point where both Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler effectively just have to mark out what they're watching, like the rest of us. It's Jim Ross's famous call here, as you pointed out, the stare down where the two wrestlers are looking left and right, and they're so smart, and they're trying to catch the eyes of every fan to give them their own moment with the two of them in the ring. The camera pans out just enough to see the thousands and millions of flashbulbs. That's what I miss as much as anything is camera.
Same.
Because what a visual that creates. And Jim Ross calls, as was used and is used in videos to this day, this is a WrestleMania moment that would become bastardized as a bit of corporate speak, but it's real.
Yeah.
It's
Is
real.
that the first time he said it?
Or
one of?
I think the company was starting to like it as a bit of terminology, but like
it felt like
it's authentic, isn't it? It's real. There's like almost like a shiver and a quake to his voice as he's saying it, because all he can do is reflect what you're seeing in front of you. Yeah, they soak up all the atmosphere. And then one of the kind of like the great things about an all-time great of a match is the scale of the pop when the bell rings. You know,
I love a bell pop.
Oh my God, you know you're in for something. And then, I'll let you cut in here because this starts with just 2 more confirmations of what we have now seen through the course of this entrance, which is 2 lockups, both won by Hogan, and in both cases he indulges in the red and yellow Hulkamania of the 80s and 90s poses. He does all the flexes. The first one is like a tease of it. The second one is, I'm having this actually, thanks very much. And just absolute seismic pops of all pops, as he immediately just indulges them as they indulge him and gives them what they want in celebrating winning 2 lockup battles with The Rock.
It's not just the size of Hogan, who is still an impressive specimen. Not a bodybuilder, but he knows how to, he's the master of body language. Yeah. His shoulder blades, when he goes like up in stages, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Whoop, 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 and he goes like that, with his fists clenched towards each other. His shoulder blades are like at the roof of the Sky Dome. You know, he looks like Blanca from Street Fighter. Just this insane upper body, knowing exactly how to make it as big as possible. And then he's got the Rock here. It's like, I don't know if he does this on purpose, and he doesn't. That's what makes this so magic. It's like, it's in one breath, like pretty horribly worked mechanically. Professional wrestling between 2 people who know how to do the spaces between. The execution is lacking, as if anyone cares when they're watching, right? But at the same time, it's also the most realistic thing you'll ever see, because so he throws The Rock, big roar, across the ring, and The Rock does this flat back, pops up off his shoulders and goes like on his feet, sprawled across the canvas. That's when you see Hogan go, ah! This always stuck out to me, right? The Rock looks up, the camera catches him at the perfect time. He's so shaken by the literal power of Hulkamania. It's a famous gif, you'll have seen it, but if you haven't, go and watch that first, like The Rock's eye starts to quiver and tremble, because it's his body reacting to, like, its body selling it, even if his eyes are trying not to. It's just like, he just gets overwhelmed literally by the power of Hulkamania. And again, context is key here, because that's what The Rock probably does now. Whenever his agent says, your latest bombed, your latest pretty much failed at the box office. Again, I'm sorry. I'm pretty worried about telling you this, actually, Dwayne. And his eye probably does that more often than not these days.
Yeah.
At the time, he was, well, before this match, he thought, well, he's a bigger megastar than Hogan.
Yeah. He controlled millions with his eye. He didn't lose
that's
control
the thing.
and reveal it.
Like the eyebrow versus the eye. It's almost as intriguing a matchup as this. Nowadays, he's very gotten to, but at the time, he wasn't. At the time, he was going to do what Hogan couldn't, and that is go to Hollywood, take it over. You know, he had the chops. He was funnier than Hogan was. It just felt instantly like, oh, he's going to make it in Hollywood.
Yeah.
No one thought he's going to fail like Hogan did.
I sat there worried and anxious knowing it was happening.
Yeah, exactly. Because
It felt
he's never
inevitable.
coming back.
Losing
He's
the Rock.
never coming back. And it's just crazy that version of The Rock, who everyone wanted to be at school. I had a mate who used to walk around a shopping mall with a dragon shirt on, unbuttoned.
Oh my God.
To try and be The Rock. That's how much people thought he was cool.
Yeah. Well, and to be absolutely fair to him, having had that moment, that involuntary response, he takes control of himself,
Yes.
I guess. And that's often what he gets credited for in this match in particular. And we're going to talk about maybe, I suppose, why The Rock was perfect for this in hindsight, as well as in the booking versus maybe a Steve Austin.
Yeah, Rock's much better than Austin for this.
He's not unflappable, otherwise he wouldn't have been flapped there, but then he immediately kind of collects himself. They do another lockup and they end up going to the ropes. It's all punches and like very basic offense, but like Hogan gets to take the physical advantage again with a clothesline, but The Rock fires back with a flying clothesline as if to illustrate, well, I'm the younger and stronger and better version of you. And then he does his own, like, just bring it like that. It's his own version of the Hulk Up. And this, now he seems like he's centered himself. But the boos are absolutely thunderous. And
it always catches me by surprise.
It's so loud at this point, and any attempt at a mixed reaction, any attempt at, the fans just don't know where to go here. This is the turning point. And to be fair to The Rock, this seems to be when he completely registers where this match has to go, because Hogan's lost a bandana at this point, which was always something he would have to happen naturally, I guess. And we know of Hogan's insecurity about like his bald head and stuff like that. But especially here where the difference in age and maybe ability is being reflected between the two. Now we're in it. Now we're sort of in the sludge of it. The Rock knows he's kind of going to have to play heel here. And Hogan is already like leaning a sympathetic side alongside being
There's
Hulk Hogan.
Actual joy etched all over his face after that first Hulk Up and the reaction to it. He's like, for me. He does the Sally Field.
They love me.
They love me. They really love me. And it's like, it's so naked. He's like, I've won.
I won again.
Buzzing.
I've done it again. To perfectly illustrate, I guess, what could have been a damaging age gap rather than something that only contributed to the drama of it. The Rock goes for his signature punches, the 2-3 with the spit in the hand, sends Hogan over to the floor, but Hogan can't quite make it over the top. And that's almost the point that, like, should on another night damage his credibility.
It's like they would usually get the groans.
Yeah, but instead only builds the sympathy, because now it's like, here's the guy we love, here's the guy we've missed, and he's also a bit of an old guy. What are you doing, Rock? So if anything, contributes to the new chemistry that the two of them have like immediately established. So they're out to the floor. Rock attacks from behind for the first time, which again feels like a choice. He just kind of decks him with a forearm to the back of the head. Probably wouldn't have done that if the reactions are still babyface and heel. They have a bit of a shoving match. We go back into the ring for punches and kicks. The Rock takes over properly now with a clothesline, and he has his first attempt, a failed attempt, but a first attempt at the rock bottom, and the fans absolutely fume that he would have the gall to go for the finish this early. Hogan manages to counter out. He hits his axe bomber, hits his linked elbow drops with the twisting of the face with the point of his boot that would always be part of his Hollywood Hogan heel offense. Gets an enormous pop. Like, he's doing the dirtiest stuff he does, and it's just getting thunderous.
Basically a heel versus heel match, this.
Yeah, at this point. The noise, again, just simply has not subsided. I cannot stress this enough. Obviously, we want you to watch these podcasts, listen along, and then by all means go and see this for yourself, because the noise has yet to subside from the beginning. Jerry Lawler at this point cuts in just to say, like, JR, this is an I was there moment. He's not lying. Some of the cliches are being invented here because it's actually true what they're calling. Hogan locks on an abdominal stretch. Again, we're talking basic offense, but the crowd are going nuts for it. He transitions into a roll-up for 2. It's not the sloppiest. It's not the cleanest of cradles, and yet the fans are desperate for this to be the finish. They'd take that as a 3 because it means Hogan beats The Rock. It's a stadium. You'd think it was like the Allstate Arena or like the Sandman in Hammerstein at this point for something as simple as a roll-up. Hogan goes for the 10 punches, stops at halfway through and bites him in the face. The crowd absolutely love it. Again, he's transitioning between heel and
It's a
babyface.
bear pit.
Yeah, it is absolutely. It's that Colosseum sort of atmosphere. They'll take anything as long as it involves The Rock getting beat. There's a punch exchange with the boos and yeas, which goes exactly as you'd expect at this point. It sends Rock to the floor, where he beats on him using the stairs and the guardrail. The two of them fight near the announce table, and at this point, when The Rock would sort of do his smack talk by the announce table, it's this beloved babyface thing. But again, it's like, how dare you? This is an old man. This is legacy stuff. How dare you do that to Hulk Hogan? So again, it swings the narrative because Rock goes to hit him with a chair and the ref pulls it away and the fans are like, thank God, the sanctity of the rules have been upheld because it's helping the Hulk. So again, the tone is so perfectly set at this point. They're back in the ring. The Rock has pivoted completely. Hogan
starting to get that trash talk going as well.
He's marching. Every time Hogan's down, he's circling the ring because he knows how to register as a heel. He remembers what it was to be the guy the people hated. The Rocky sucks chance to rain in down on him. Hogan manages to make a comeback after the ref is bumped, takes off the belt and starts whipping The Rock with the belt. Gets an enormous response. He's cheating, but the ref is down.
It's Cody Rhodes' favourite match of all time, this. And then when you watch it makes a whole lot of sense.
You can sort of see why. He wraps the belt around his fist because he wants to load up a big punch on The Rock, but The Rock manages to counter, takes the belt for himself again, takes his time. Hogan lays out Cell in the middle. The Rock is just walking around with this belt, and the fans are just they're ready to jump the ring and get him at this point. So he indulges again. The referee is still out, so they've both hit each other with the belt. He whips Hogan half to death. He spits on the belt to line up his last whip like he would have punched, but he's basically spitting on Hulkamania at this point. But the ref is obviously still knackered, so ultimately he's unable to get the 3 with it. At this point, we're sort of heading for the finish. So The Rock thinks he's got it done, nails the rock bottom. Hogan kicks out at 2 for an earthquake of a pop. Why? Because it's the red and yellow Hulkamania comeback pop. Hollywood Hogan is doing the late 80s, early 90s Hulk Hogan comeback. It's the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4.
JR and Jerry Lawler, who probably between them on Hulkamania, guys.
No.
They're Memphis, they're Bill Watts, they're Rugged Wrestling.
Never called it.
Yeah, they are marking out.
Yeah, it's the 1, 2, 3, the U, the whole thing, which you have to wonder, would that have even been included in the original version of this match, or have they put this...
I don't know. Jerry Lawler does the high pitch that he usually reserves when he sees a pair of large breasts.
Yeah.
He's looking up!
They're puppies to him.
Yeah.
Hogan's gone back as puppies to him. So he hulks up, hulks all the way up, big boot, leg drop, 2.
Yeah.
The Rock's managed to sort of kick out. The crowd are just in shock. Hogan's in shock. It's obviously not the first time the leg drop's been kicked out of. But again, because all of this almost feels like improvised, it's fine. All bets are off at this point. This is end of the world stuff you're watching, so anything is possible ultimately. After the Rock's kicked out, the fans are just a complete mess. You look at this stadium shot of not just the fans facing the hard camera, but the camera constantly pulls out to capture the enormity of it. And this is not commentary, hyperbole or cliche. Everybody is standing.
Yeah.
Every single person is standing because you just want to get the closest possible look at this drama, right? Hogan goes for one more leg drop, but now he misses. The Rock is able to get up, not just get up, should I say, kip up, to show that
it looks amazing.
Just simply got more in the tank than Hogan. Sorry, Canada, I'm 20 years younger and I'm the great one. He hits a rock bottom to yet more boos, hits another one to more boos, in which he has to lift the dead and dying Hogan to his feet to even drill him. He still says, no, that's not enough. It's a people's elbow, and that's the 3. Interestingly, and I'll get your thoughts on this, incredible closing stretch. After all of that, there is yet another enormous pop. It's as if the fans now don't necessarily want to cheer for The Rock, don't necessarily want to cheer for Hulk Hogan, simply want to cheer for what they've witnessed. JR quickly cuts in to say, the veteran lion pinned by the younger lion. We're all lions here.
Yeah.
It's not wrong, is it? Everyone's a lion. Yeah. The fans at this point, before we get to the
lions, they're roaring their heads off and everything.
Before we get to the post-match, the fans, almost in celebratory mood, you pointed out last score winner against the fiercest rivals. The rivals at this point is anybody not in the building. Yeah. Because fans, wrestlers, commentators, us watching at home, thank God we were part of it.
Yeah. This match is, it completely defies everything you've been told or you think you know about pro wrestling psychology and indeed storytelling, because as we covered in the intro, the story for this was terrible, completely overthought, completely overcomplicated. The idea that things need to happen in a certain order, and if you do this trick, he'll get over as a babyface, or, you know, the babyface is meant to be the more skilled wrestler. All of these things that American, like, wrestling people tell you about syntax and order and psychology, it's completely thrown out the window. And storytelling, the story's king. No, it isn't. Megastars are king. Charisma's king. You can do whatever you want if you are a star. And unfortunately, that extends to Hulk Hogan to a really, really disgusting extent. Not anymore, but did for a while. I'm going to be a dick about the match because it illustrates how much none of this stuff matters, right? If you look at these kickouts at the end, so there's the leg drop kick out, there's the rock bottom kick out. They're not 2.999 kickouts.
No.
And that's like the sort of thing that anyone can do if you time it right. They're actually bad if you just watched it in just a little clip, no sound. I'll get onto that in a minute. 2.15, but the fans don't care. It's like Hogan and Rock have located a unit of time between 2.99 ad infinitum and 3 because of like the disbelief.
Yeah.
You know? There's another bit which defies anything you've been told about pro wrestling psychology, because ultimately, while important, if you're Hogan and The Rock, it really doesn't matter. So the idea is the babyface is meant to be the skilled guy. This is like the most common core, like, American version of psychology, which is a multi-stranded thing, but whatever. Hulk Hogan is not skilled in this match.
No.
He isn't. Like, The Rock, on an individual performance basis, kills him. And he makes it without the fans wanting to sell for that fact. There's a bit where The Rock hits a spine buster and Hogan just falls over.
Just crumples. Yeah.
Just crumples. And usually you would get a groan of, oh, God. Like, even good matches get a groan or a you f***ed up chant. Even with people like at this time as well. Like, even people who they like, they were just pricks. Some fans in wrestling in America at the time. They go, you're f***ed up.
Yeah.
Like, the beloved ECW hardcores would get that. Hogan up. He does. He just doesn't get up for it because he can't. He's Hogan. And then they're like, The Rock, you suck. What? You know how this goes, and you know that he's messed. They don't care.
Get off him.
Get off it. It's like, that's why The Rock, you should have lifted him up better. It's like they just don't. They do not care.
No.
They are absolutely bound and determined to fall in love with Hulk Hogan, because the Hulk Hogan effect. Dave Meltzer's talked about the Hulk Hogan effect, where you forget yourself because he's such a star.
I've lived it.
You forget yourself. You know he's an arsehole. You hear Real American, your involuntary, like, the reflexive thing is, gosh, I don't want to do that. I don't actually want to do that, but it just overrides every sort of sense of logic in your body. On The Rock's performance as well. So the 2.999 aren't actually that. It's like, it's 2 and a bit.
Yeah.
And the spinebuster looks awful. There's a bit, though, where Hogan tosses him out the ring. The Rock is trying to sell the fact, because he wants this to be as magic as anybody else. He tries to sell it as, right, a guy who these fans in this moment, and it is a moment in time, believe this dude is a superhero. So I'm going to sell with my much superior athleticism that he's just pulled off a super heroic feat. So Hogan tosses him. Hogan does nothing, just gets him by the trunks, tosses him. The Rock does this sort of like cartwheel bump to the outside, and he makes himself look so big, like he's just been, like he's in the backdraft of an explosion. Like, you can almost see, even his hands are like as wide as possible.
Yeah.
Like, there's one hand on one part of the screen, and right in the upper corner are his legs. He makes himself do the biggest cartwheel to make it look like he's been blown away by Hollywood Hogan. So as much as this is...
It's how people used to sell for Andre.
Yeah.
The weaker his offense got, the more people had to bounce around.
It seems ridiculous, but it's a match that operates on this emotional logic that makes no sense, but that's pro wrestling, ultimately.
I think that's it. I think the ability to read from The Rock and like from Hogan, who's one of the best crowd readers ever, but from the ability of both of them seemingly simultaneously to read that nothing, absolutely nothing is going to break the spell here. The fans, everybody to a man, wants desperately to just buy the fiction the whole way through. It allows the wrestlers to then, right, well, we understand the assignment now.
Yeah.
We know how to preserve that fiction. There's nothing we're going to do in our performance to break that spell either. And it's just so lovely when those two things are simpatico, because like wrestlers are allowed to be themselves and be their own people, and sometimes might want to forge ahead with something, even if it's at the expense of that audience investment. Likewise, as you say, audiences are just as ready to kind of turn on something or be like, "No, I'm out now. You lost me. You lost me, and you're never getting me back." When we talk about Hogan, the TNA house show was at in 2010 when he's in red tracky bottoms, and he's still doing that on the ring, and he hasn't come to our side, and I'm screaming for it. Like I'm needed. Well, you haven't done your ear thing.
You're not even a Hogan guy.
I'm not a Hogan guy. Was never a Hogan guy. Just quickly, briefly on this, because it does sort of it factors into like what happens as a nice capper for this match. Hogan is up and like he's selling the ribs and folding himself in such a way that he suddenly couldn't look any older. Like there was an element where you were starting to see the sympathy cut in during the match, but now we can just be all sympathetic. He may as well be 79, let alone 49, next to The Rock, this like peak and prime of his career athlete. He's like selling his ribs, but he sticks out the hand gingerly. The Rock shakes it. The fans go wild again, which is what they want because this is a happy ending all the way around. Hogan's had his moment, and the fans are suddenly okay with the fact that he's lost the match. Who aren't okay with who's lost the match are the NWO, Nash and Hall, who were
finished.
Who were told to stay backstage because as a work and a shoot, they know this gimmick is absolutely finished, baby. They come out, they immediately jump Hogan. There's no ceremony to that. They're just like, I think you see Hall do gestures. What are you shaking his hand for? So that's the explanation given for why they're decking him. The Rock sees this, does the right thing, comes back in, makes the hero save. The two of them easily dispose of Nash and Hall. And then you get The Rock insisting that Hogan give the people, he called himself a Hulkamaniac in the build, give the people, including himself, what they want. And there's just that gorgeous shot as Hogan is doing the posing routine like you've seen a gazillion times. Hogan must pose. The Rock is stood in the corner with just the biggest smile on his face. Now, work or shoot, that adds to this incredible moment because after beating his ass, he's allowed to be a Hulkamaniac himself. All through that match, he's had to be The Rock. Now he gets to be somebody in the stands getting to watch Hulk Hogan. The two of them walk away from the ramp together. Hogan's still selling. And the last great visual is as they stand in front of a screen, the screen has that mirroring effect where you just see Hogan and Rock, because the screen mirrors itself over, and it is like they've created like a time tunnel just full of Hogan Rocks, as if to illustrate this.
Well, we're still talking about it now.
This intergenerational classic that decades later, idiots on the internet will still want to pour into the details of because it's, to your point, it's the magic of all of this.
It defies wrestling psychology. It defies sense. It defies what people are seeing. It's total magic. Total magic. And that Hogan entrance, rewind. And that Hulk up, with those massive shoulder blades and the Rock's twitching eye. I rewinded that probably about 15 times. It probably took me 3 times as long as the match actually lasted to get through it because of those moments.
That's the magic, man. That's the magic. Let us know in the comments below if this is one of your best matches ever. Let us know your suggestions for future editions of Best Match Ever. We're going to be going deeper on some of our personal favourites, but of course we're looking for suggestions from you as well. If you want to do that on X or Twitter, you can do, where you can find Michael Sidgwick at
M. Sidgwick.
You can find me at Michael Hamflett. You can find our brilliant producer at
It's Nicholas.
And until the next Best Match Ever, we will see you soon.